Nope, not recording.
Okay, super excited to see folks coming into the Franchisor Forum series on the 6 stages of franchise relationships. We have made it all the way to the C stage, and we hope that you've been able to join us for multiple versions as everyone's kind of getting into the room and getting organized. I just want to remind you that this is based off the series from Greg Nathan's book, The Franchise E Factor. I'm Robin Gagnon. I am the chair of the of the Franchisor Forum. And I'm also joined by Emma Dickinson, the vice chair of the Franchisor Forum. And this series has been a collaborative effort by an amazing team this year, which has included as well our advisory board members, which are Tom Wood, who's the vice president and CEO of Floor Coverings International. A new addition to our board, Kim Gubera, who's the CEO of PureTech USA in Canada, Chris Stewart, who is the CEO of Blooming Blinds. We have Shelley O'Callaghan, who is the EVP and General Counsel of Dairy Queen International. New person joining our board, Tricia Petties, who's the CEO of Payroll Vault, as well as Rob Goggins, who is the president of Great Club. So we're excited to have a wonderful advisory board who has pushed this content forward every single month. And we have one more before we end the series, but we are now at the 6th stage of the franchise relationship, the C stage. And super excited to not only be sharing this with you today, but also be sharing the incredible message from Greg Nathan himself, a psychologist well known in the industry, and also the actual original writer and author of the book, The Franchise E Factor, who brought this to fruition for us. So Greg is going to come on in just a moment. Be kind with us as it relates to Zoom. We're going to show an amazing video. His mouth may move at a little bit of a different pace, but his heart and soul are here with us as we celebrate franchising and the stages of the franchisee-franchisor relationship. With that, I'll let him take it away.
Hello, franchising friends. If you work within a franchise network as an executive, perhaps as a franchisee or an advisor to franchise networks, you've probably scratched your head from time to time trying to make sense of some of the relationship dynamics that occur within franchise networks. My name's Greg Nathan. I'm an organizational psychologist, and I've devoted most of my life to understanding the psychology of franchising and what helps franchisors and franchisees to collaborate and to share their experience, their collective intelligence to drive greater success and satisfaction. One of the models that we've developed through a lot of research is called the Franchise E Factor. Earlier this year at the IFA convention, we actually ran a summit on this topic, and there was so much interest and enthusiasm that the IFA Franchisor Forum has continued this year to run a series of webinars on each of the 6 stages in the Franchise E Factor. If you have the opportunity to attend one of these webinars, I would highly recommend it. I can't make it myself because it's 2:30 in the morning for me in Australia, but I know you'll get enormous value from sharing your own experience and learning from the experience of your peers. So I highly endorse this series and congratulate the Franchisor Forum on this initiative. I hope you can make it to one of these webinars.
Wonderful message from Greg. I especially like the part where he talks about he's scratching his head and then he reaches up and scratches his head. He's giving us a visual cue to what
Hello,
he's going to say today. And if you haven't been with us for the first stages, just quickly, I'll run through those. As you may remember, or you may have experienced in your life as a franchisee or a franchisor, when we start out, and we have 2 franchise agreements out for signature today, and I spoke with both of these would-be franchisees yesterday, and we are all so happy. We are in the glee stage. Everything is wonderful, and all we see is great results ahead. But we know from Greg's work that that will actually morph at some point into the fee stage where they start wondering, what am I getting for all of this money I'm paying in royalties? From that, they may move into this stage we understand to be the me stage. It's thinking, gosh, I could have just done all this on my own. All of this is subject to my effort and my work. And then ultimately we move from that to the free stage. And I kind of like to think about this like teenagers in the house. If I could just break free of all these constraints, how great I would be at things. And ultimately, in the best franchise relationships, we morph to this very important stage that we're at today, the C stage, where a franchisee and a franchisor jointly say, I think I see the importance of following the franchise system. And I really do acknowledge the value. And if we all did our own things, then standards would drop overall and we would lose the very things that give us our competitive edge. And with that, I would like to welcome our amazing guest speakers for today. And I'm moderating, so I'm going to just ask the questions and allow them to speak this amazing truth that they have about their journey into the C stage. And that will include Emma Dickinson and Michael Gonzalez. And I would ask both of you to just take a moment and give us a brief introduction to yourselves, what you are doing, and how you ended up here at the C stage for today's webinar.
So thank you, Robin, and it's wonderful to be here with everyone today. I'm Emma Dickinson. I'm the CEO and president of Home Helpers Home Care. We are a brand that's been around since 1997. I have been with the brand for 18 years now, and I've been with 3 iconic brands in franchising throughout my career, spanning about 35 years now. And certainly over half of it now being at Home Helpers Home Care, where we have today about 380 franchise agreements across 40 states and 1 province in Canada. And we continue to be in a strong growth trajectory. I've been working with the IFA in a number of roles throughout, and certainly I'm thrilled to be able to be a panelist here today with Michael, and I'll let Michael introduce himself.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me today. It's a pleasure. I was 29 years old when I started Home Helper, so I don't have this illustrious background in career highlights. My come up was Home Helpers. That's where I learned about business, how to run a business, about the home care industry. Very strong worker, though. But I was a franchisee for 15 years. Then I exited. That's why I don't have white hair anymore. So as you can see, it took 8 months, and then raised my hand to see if I could come back to help out with the system. And luckily they took me in, and now I started off as a performance coach for the last couple of years and have been promoted currently to Director of Franchise Services, where I run the support services for our franchisees.
What a great story. So let's just jump right in, because the C stage often begins with that shift in perspective, a moment with something clicks. So Michael, for you, what helped you shift from the 3 stage where you may have been testing some boundaries to becoming more open-minded and inquisitive in this C stage? This is really about perspective. So I'd love to hear what experiences or initiatives helped you move around that corner.
Yeah, thank you, Robin. Well, when I love this book because it really did resonate with me a lot. And sometimes it's not linear. I mean, sometimes we may skip a stage, come back to a stage, but obviously when you get to the C stage is when you realize this is a shared partnership, and I know that I see the benefits. For me, it was an extreme case. It was a lawsuit that I was summoned in 8 years in.
Today we are
So 8
opening
years.
up a file on a really
Yeah, there. 8 years into my journey, I was summoned for a class action lawsuit. I had made a mistake in how to pay overtime for live-in caregivers. So it was a mistake. The rules had changed too throughout that time period. So at first we were allowed to do things a certain way, then we were not allowed to. Now they've changed it currently. So this was back in 2013 to 2016. And at that point, when you get a lawsuit and your career or your life is is threatened, your livelihood is threatened, there's very little people to turn to. And I really saw at that point my franchisor as I need them to be on my side. I need their support. And there's not much they can do, obviously, in those type of situations where they were dragged into this lawsuit with me. But I just needed their support. And to Emma's credit, she at least took a conversation with me, and I was able to vent to her. I just need support in any way, shape, or way you can do that for me. Well, luckily, because of that support, we were able to. My strategy was to get the franchisor dismissed from the case, which we were able to do because I just needed them to be on my side. Obviously I sought leadership. We got through the case, luckily, and I became a better business owner, but I knew from that experience that they had my back. They really did. And that solidified me knowing that this is a partnership. And so that was kind of an extreme case, but that was one of a few instances or experiences that got me to the C stage and stay in the C stage from that point on.
And if I could just pop in here for a minute, Michael and I kind of grew up in home helpers together. It was his first experience in business ownership, but it wasn't my first experience in franchising and being responsible for growth of a franchise brand. And Michael was always a terrific franchisee. He at times wanted to do things his own way, going back to some of the other stages and talking about it not being linear. And there was another situation early on, which if we want to dive into, we can, where, in Michael's mind, we weren't moving fast enough to resolve. And understanding that when you're a certain size, you're not a speedboat anymore, you're a Queen Mary. And you've got to make sure that you're acting in the best interest of the greater good. But what I can say is, I remember when Michael came to me, we were actually at a national conference in Nashville, and Michael asked for some time. And of course, absolutely, we'll sit down, having no idea what was coming. And that conversation was pivotal for both of us. It was he was young. He's married. He's got two young daughters. And this is certainly something that could have really been catastrophic for him. And we had a conversation about what do we do? What do I do was the question. And the answer was, okay, you've got a couple of choices, but the one that is, I think, most pragmatic is you continue to work hard and grow this business as big as you can to navigate and weather whatever the outcome is going to be. And, we did connect our counsel, his counsel. Certainly to his point, we couldn't do a lot, although we were named in this particular situation, but we were able to work in collaboration for the greatest outcome for all parties involved. And we were successful. But that really was a pivotal time where I noticed that Michael was embracing more and more of the business model. As an example, and Michael, I hope you don't mind me sharing, we had been telling Michael, you need to hire people. You can't do this all by yourself. He was running a very, very, very lean office and trying to do it all himself and married with two young children. He was being very successful, but we knew it could be more. And it was during that time frame that I saw Michael really embrace and start saying, okay, I can leverage these tools and resources and the advice and the coaching and have better outcomes.
I love that because I think this is just such a great example of how that personal experience can shift your understanding almost on a dime. So Emma, sometimes as the franchisor, it feels self-evident that decisions are rooted for you in the greater good of the system. But how do you communicate that as a franchisor when franchisees may not always see it in that because they're concerned with their individual situation or their market or their marketing spend. And has your thinking evolved over time?
It certainly has. Franchising, we talk about it all the time that it is relational. It is about relationships. But yet there's a certain part, and it depends on how each party comes to the relationship where it's transactional. You know, I talk a lot about the franchise agreements tell you how to do things right, and it spells out kind of how the relationship is going to be managed. But it still is a relationship, and sometimes you have to do the right thing. There was nothing in our agreement that said that I was going to collaborate with Michael or Home Helpers was going to collaborate with Michael and navigate through this just terrible time. But it was the right thing to do. And, ultimately it was up to him, but we could be a resource. We could be a sounding board. We could be working in collaboration versus not. And so, how do you communicate that? I think actions are more important than words. And I think over the years, we have, as a brand, demonstrated our willing, not just in this case, but along many, many cases. I mean, as an example, during COVID, we were one of the brands that we were open. We were working because we were designated as a critical business to be open by all 50 states and the District of Columbia. But we didn't know what was going to happen for our franchisees. And so, I mean, we're being very real and raw here in some of these conversations that we don't typically share. But franchisees were worried about what happens next. How are they going to be able to provide services? Are they going to where are their payor sources going to continue to come through? And so we gave some relief on royalty payments as an example, while the government was figuring out how they were going to help support small businesses, which I got to give the IFA credit here too. The IFA really went to bat for small businesses and franchising as PPP programs were being put together because originally franchise businesses were excluded. And I don't know how many people really realize that, but it was through their work that made so much across franchising possible. But I think to get back on track, I think our actions over time had demonstrated the goodwill and the want, the desire to continue to live in a C stage, and eventually a we stage. And so education, communication, transparency, and re-education, communication, and transparency, and helping one understand that while we are responsible for the aggregate, and that's what we have to think, we also have to balance the needs of the individual. And sometimes it doesn't work. I mean, I'm just going to be really honest, but you always look for the path to make it work.
So many great nuggets of information there, Emma. It's not what's said in your franchise agreement, it's your actions that may not be covered, what's happening in the aggregate. Michael, for you, like looking at that bigger picture from the franchisor's perspective, when did you start to realize that, hey, this is really about doing the right thing for the largest body of people versus simply these rules being put out there? What are some examples that would resonate with the audience?
Yeah, well, my example here is actually a disagreement I had with Emma. We were in one of these councils that we were that they put together, which allows franchisees to have a voice. So we appreciate that. But this was years ago where, Emma was saying, a lot of, 7% of our system is incorporating technology into services. And I don't know if you remember this, Emma, but I was kind of loud about that. I'm like, I think our bread and butter obviously are billable hours and caregiving, and just incorporating this technology kind of gets in the way. It's a distraction, and I just didn't see it. And I felt very strongly about that. And I don't think Emma was saying we want to replace technology, people with technology. It was just incorporating it. And it was from that experience when we rolled out a technology package that we rolled out for our system that I was in one of the first pilot programs. And I went out and I started to test it, and I started to see started to feel the responses about this technology package. And I started getting good responses, and I started getting light bulbs go off in the family living room with the consultation, where family members were just feeling very good that, not only are we going to provide a caregiving person in the home, but we're enveloped by all these other services that can, just help improve. That doesn't require an actual person. And then I started to see the same responses to our referral partners. And so I kind of joked with myself. I'm like, oh, I guess Emma was right. At least from that experience, I saw that our leadership were forward thinking. They were trying to figure out a way to differentiate us in a very saturated industry. And so it was from that experience that I started to gain trust their instincts. And so that was very helpful.
So it's so interesting to me, Michael, as you were sharing that story, the first thing you said about the technology, and then I started to see, and then you said
Yeah.
again, and then I started to see. And just like here we are in this C stage, and that really is what it's about. Emma, as you're incorporating these technology advances, doing these new things, Michael mentioned that he wasn't an early advocate, but he was on a council that was learning about this early, and then you made him a test case, which is really smart, by the way, because sometimes that person can be turned around quickly. Do you work with your team to institute this active listening at all levels to make sure those voices feel heard? Because listening is a very powerful driver of trust as we're trying to navigate to that C stage.
It is, and I'd like to think we do well with it. At all stages of our organization, we have a support staff of about 40 that are employed at the National Support Center with the sole mission of continuing to gain market share to help our franchisees be more effective, more profitable, more provide exceptional care in the home. We can always do better though, because I think as good as we think we are, we can never be complacent and we must always continue to strive to be better. And we do provide a lot of opportunities within our network to have their voice heard, and to be able to provide and help shape the direction that we're going. Um, nothing that we do is that we roll out. It has always been navigated through either one of our councils or some type of a working committee, working project committee. That's everything from our websites to our operations manual to a new technology platform, whatever that looks like, because I've been in franchising for a lot of years, and I've seen great examples of responsible franchising, and I've seen some not so great ones. I've always been fortunate to be with three terrific brands, and I've learned a lot there. I've also seen brands who try the direct tell method. They treat it like a corporation where it's our way or the highway, and we have the right to do it, and we're just going to do it, and you're going to, that's generally not very successful. And it's hard to get people to the C stage and the we stage if they're not offered the opportunity to provide voice and collaboration, and in Michael's case and in many cases throughout our network, to be able to be part of the solution, to be part of an innovative solution and pilot. There's a lot of things we test we don't do, that we say no to because we don't get the right results and or reaction and feedback from those that are testing it. But we always try to employ active listening. Now, there are times, and this is where it sometimes gets to be a balance, where just like Michael was saying, this new technology package that we wanted to roll out, his was not the only feedback that was like, I don't know about this. Our bread and butter is providing a caregiver in the home. And, we're doing really well with that right now. And we're continuing to grow. And so, this could be a distraction. His was not the only voice that shared that. They were all important voices. But as a leader, when you're working in your industry at the association levels, whether it's the IFA for small businesses, or in our case, the Home Care Association on the home care side, there are sometimes decisions that have to be made that the results are there, the engagement is going to come because it's like Michael, he took it out into the market and he started getting great feedback. And so there are times that decisions have to be made that are in the best for the aggregate and the best for the business long term, and you have to work really hard to get that buy-in.
Absolutely. And so, Michael, that coaching or communication style, tell me how that helps you feel as a franchisee, as a collaborative partner, rather than someone who is being managed or directed the way you would in a employee-employer type relationship.
Yeah, well, the way Emma articulates the communication that she's had with a lot of franchisees, I've seen it consistently for 15 years, and now on the other side as well, where you have to give voice to the franchisee if this is a true partnership. A partnership requires two sides of the story, and platforms where we are allowed to represent the aggregate and say we should go in this direction or that direction. And in many of these cases where there's conflict, I think we can agree that there are faults on both sides. Sometimes the franchisor drops the ball, and sometimes the franchisees just don't listen, and they're not hearing what's probably better for the good. Because what's better for the good happens to be better for you. I learned that when I was looking at I was going to touch on this a little later, but when I was looking at data, one of my biggest referral partners were my fellow home helpers franchisees. So my success is tied to their success, and the system's success as well. So I would say that the reason I rose my hand after exiting to come back to this particular system that I grew up in to help build, make it better, or in any way possible, and just to support it, was because I knew the leadership consistently hears us out, considers our point of view, and it sometimes implements what we have to say. And so that's really the key. And I think the chapter mentions this as part of a solution for franchisors, is to listen. And I know franchisees can be very irritating, annoying. Sometimes we can be very abrasive, and we're not great in our delivery of our message. But we do
I
want
don't know what franchisees you're talking about. None of those
I don't
things
know.
have happened.
Not me, but that is important. So as long as you're consistently allowing us to voice our opinion, vent, but then I think franchisees want the partnership. That's why from the very beginning we signed the agreement, because we know we're going into a partnership. We're not our own person. We're here to work with a group. So
I love
just
that.
listening. Yeah.
And so we talked a lot about feelings, but let's shift a little bit into talking about like system-wide data and maybe some insight. So Emma, is there a place where using some system-wide data changed the perspective or helped to improve decision making that was valuable in these conversations with franchisees?
Yeah, so when I joined Home Helpers a long time ago, 18 years ago, we had franchisees reporting information in several disparate systems. We didn't have one source of truth to be able to utilize that data to get the data and then do something with it and then report it back out. And we spent a lot of years getting to that place. And um, we would get everybody to the same platform, but not necessarily the same version of the same platform. And so in March, actually February of 2020 was the last office that we had to migrate to what we have as it's called Well Sky, as as a single source of truth. And so now all franchisees are on the same platform, they're on the same version. We have the ability to be able to pull that data and and provide benchmarking out. We've also added some other features to our tech stack that help us do that more efficiently, like with Tableau And we're just now implementing an aggregator that is going to make it even easier to provide out benchmarking and dashboarding to our franchisees, which all along now has helped us make better decisions as we have better insights to our KPIs, which are or key performance indicators, which revenue, certainly, build hours, pay rates, average bill rates. And now we have a whole system to be able to do that with versus something that was just so disparate in the past. That has allowed us to make better decisions on business trend going forward and the way we're investing, as Michael said, in this tech package that showed us that this was going to be an important non-labor driven part of what we could offer to allow families to keep their loved ones in the home longer. And we could do it in a way that was profitable for the franchisees when used correctly, and made a better experience for the care recipient. So it's been a long path, and in the age of technology today, it's just going so fast. Now adding in layers of AI to be able to even enhance that greater. It's never going to be done, but I think the real key to us was getting everybody on the same single source of truth in how they schedule and bill and track referral sources, and then also the other piece to that is being able to have the insight to the business.
And that visibility, all that transparency really does help a franchisee see where they stack up against everyone else and not feel as though, hey, I'm out here acting differently. Because when you see everyone else's performance, it's easier to see where you fit into the system.
Well, it helps identify the gaps. If, as an example, if your average bill rate is, whatever, the systems, and you're either above or below that, why? And if I'm below that, is there an opportunity, elasticity in the market to kind of reset?
Absolutely. So, Michael, I'm going to switch over to you and talk a little bit about empathy and understanding, because that's really what came into play with the story that you shared. And as you entered into the C stage, and you went to the leadership at Home Helpers and said, "I've got this issue. This is a lawsuit. It's upon me." Did you start to understand and recognize that where that empathy was coming into play, and how did that affect your mindset as it related to the brand and where you were in your franchisee journey?
Yes, thank you. Well, I definitely had empathy for my franchisor, especially since I dragged them into a lawsuit and I saw the headaches that they had to deal with just being dragged into something that they had no business being dragged into. But later down the road, I started to notice that we were getting vendors for the system. We were incorporating tools for the system. I'm talking in my time, like Emma said, they were a little bit more disparate tools. Now we have, more system-wide things that are very helpful. So I think when I started to see vendors come in that were meant to help us or tools, I noticed that even though I bought in as one franchisee, it really required the whole system, 200, 300 franchisees to buy in on utilizing our vendors, utilizing these tools. Because if not, if the system doesn't buy into the tools, then we can't get information. If the system doesn't buy into the vendors want to leave because there's not enough buy-in for them to give a discount or lower prices. So I started to see that the franchisor did work hard to get us things that we needed to build our business, but since the system wasn't buying in in the majority, we would end up losing here and there. And so that's where I started to notice you got to be part of the solution, not the problem. Give it a try. I mean, they're not going to give us something to hurt us. Obviously, that's just foolish. So let's just try it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but at least we tried.
I love these insights because they're just really gold for franchisors trying to accelerate a journey for their franchisees, but they're equally valuable. Like this is the Franchisor Forum, but Michael, your perspective is so valuable. So let me ask you this. You're actually coaching new franchisees now, I'm assuming, in part of your role. So what advice would you give them, the newer franchisees, to help them navigate these early stages and reach the C stage more quickly and constructively? Is there something you wish someone had told you early in your path?
Are you referring to me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay. Yes, there's a lot I wish I knew, or I listened. So one thing I did not listen to was you can't run this business by yourself. And I think this is business 101, but I didn't get the memo in the beginning. But any business, your goal is to build some revenue and buy teams, buy yourself a team. I mean, that is the first thing you should do is build a team, have a team, and mentor and coach a team to build the business for you. So that's something I wish I knew. I did want to share. I'm a history background, so I love this quote from Benjamin Franklin, uh, and I'm gonna read it. He says, um, "Where's my quote here?" So if you tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn. And I love that quote because that is franchising. It's
Mm-hmm.
not so much just going to conferences, going to these platforms and meetings and listening to best practices. It's if the franchisor or franchisees, if they just get involved with each other and stay engaged. And I tell this more to franchisees. Obviously, the franchisor always wants engagement. And
Mhm.
franchisees sometimes don't want anything to do with the franchisor, or they had a bad experience and that's it. They're never going to give them a second chance. Stay involved, stay engaged, be part of the solution because that way you do learn. You will get golden nuggets that will move the trajectory of your business if you stay involved. And that's what I would like to share.
That's such great feedback because I tell you, the franchisees I always worry about are the ones I don't hear from.
Mhm.
The ones I'm hearing from that have a new idea or upset about something, I actually welcome that. But the ones who go quiet on me are the ones that are most frightening for franchisors. So Emma, let me ask you that same question. You've been doing this for so long now, such a respected leader. What advice would you give newer franchisors starting out to establish the ground rules from the ground up and move people through this to the C stage?
That's a great question. You know, I'll go back to what Michael said. Nothing is linear, and there's going to be advances and retreats. And it goes back to what do you want to be as a brand? I talked earlier that the franchise agreement tells everyone how to do the right things, but or how to do things right, but not necessarily how to do the right thing. And you just have to have that lens of being able to do the right things for the business and the right things for franchisees. And new franchisors, you have to find out early, lean in early into ways that you can listen, going back to active listening to your network, whether that's formally or informally, whether that's through surveys or through, performance groups or councils or picking up the phone. We've gotten too reliant on email, which I think is a huge mistake. These types of events where you can have a Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting with someone and see their face and have a discussion, I think is always best, unless you can be there in person, as it were. And then I would just stress the importance of the history, even if a new emerging brand, you've had some success with some level of corporate, you know, unit, and making sure that you're following the model. I tell franchisees, it goes back to Management 2000, which many of you won't even recognize that, but Bob Gappa, in training performance coaches would say, the best opportunity for a franchisee and a franchisor to be successful is that both fully, completely, and consistently follow the system. Fully, completely, and consistently follow the system. And then to Michael's point about engagement, finding ways to make sure that is engagement occurring across the network. And that's between franchisor and franchisee. Yes, it's also between the franchisor and the support staff and the franchisees, the vendor partners and all parties. It's finding that way for engagement. And, talk about data a little earlier. We do a fair amount of data analytics. I won't say that we're, a big corporation by any means, but based on what we have, we know and we track that if franchisees participate and do these certain things, which are all involved in engagement, that they will outperform the average in our system. And we see that year after year after year, whether that's those engagement um, uh, indicators could be attending national conference, participating in community conversations, being in a performance group, whatever we deem those to be on a ongoing basis. We know that when franchisees are involved in those things that are supported by the franchisor, they will as an average outperform our average. And so those are things, finding those KPIs early, making sure they're engagement focused, and then tracking results and ensuring that everyone can fully, completely, and consistently implement the model.
Great, great nuggets, Box. And I want to close with this question to you, Michael. Looking ahead to the we stage where the franchisor and the franchisee are these trusted allies, what would help franchisees to continue that progression? What's still needed to make partnership the norm as you shift from C to we?
Yeah, well, I think anybody who entered a franchise system or into a franchise model wants the partnership. They really do. So even if we're let down, even if we get discouraged for whatever reasons, we still yearn for the partnership. So all I would say is to continue to stay involved in any platform or resources you're given by the franchisor. I'm a frugal person, so I know I'm paying for this. So as we get into the C stage, that's kind of advanced in your journey. You're probably paying more royalties than you did in the beginning. So the first practical thing that I think about is I'm paying for this. I'm paying for all the things the franchisor is putting out there. So why not take advantage of it? Whether you think it's little value or high value, take advantage of everything because you're participating. Your royalty dollars are participating in all those things that are given to you for your benefit. I would also say, scaling is an important thing that we all want to achieve. Well, what better way to do it that we have a community built into our agreement? Again, I mentioned my fellow franchisees around me generated $1.8 million in 3 years of data that I can compile. They were my number one referral source. So when I saw that, I realized, okay, I'm definitely in the we stage. And if I can only make them better, that 1.8 can double or triple. And so again, it's a very practical partnership if we stay involved with each other. And when the franchisor does drop the ball, help them turn it around and make it better, And I think that's where the franchisor just needs to work with the franchisees and listen, and they do. And hopefully you're in a franchise system that is listening, that has leadership, that's willing to consider what you have to say. Yeah, so I think that's just leverage the partnership overall. One last example I will say is we're given awards, and it's very nice, and we get up on stage and take a picture with Emma. Leverage that. I put together an awards winning page on my website, and now that one award has a snapshot on my website that now all prospective families or that are considering which home care agency to work with can now see that I'm an award-winning office and compiling all that together. That was one way I leveraged my partnership with with my franchise. So yeah, there might be other examples, but
Those are just great closing words. Thank you so much. I love that overall idea. Leverage the partnership with your franchisor. I want to thank both of you for your honesty, your transparency, your insights, your individual leadership to come forward and share, because getting through these stages is not always comfortable. And you both noted it's not linear, it comes and goes, but you've both seen the bigger picture, and your franchisor has responded with trust and honesty, collaboration. It's building a foundation for the greatest, strongest stage of all, the we stage. So that will be coming up for us in the near future. Just thank you all for joining us. Michael and Emma, thank you again. We're going to carry these amazing lessons forward as we continue building systems rooted in partnership, shared purpose, and sustained success. Emma, any closing thought before we welcome Hader to give us an update from the government relations?
My only closing thought is we talk about this a lot, and it sounds so easy. It's not easy. I think you have to really have a spirit of innovation and collaboration, and really approach this in a relational manner versus a transactional. And if you think about your franchise systems, you can look at different parties within that brand, whether it's employees or franchisees or vendor partners, and you can say, yeah, that's a relational, that's transactional. And to get to the C stage and the we stage, you have to be in a relational position. I just don't see how you get there without it. And so think about that as you're building and growing, and focusing on that as your North Star.
I love that. And speaking of relationships, there's no one who builds a better relationship in DC than our incredible government relations staff. And we are very grateful to be joined today by Hader Murtaza, who is going to give us an update on one of the most exciting things that has happened in the decade I've been engaged in franchising, and that's the American Franchise Act. So Hader, can you tell us what is going on at the Hill? You guys are busy, right?
Thank you, everybody. And just saying a quick hello. I'll go off video in a second. I just stepped outside, but you are correct. It has been a little busy in a good way. And first of all, I love the transition into the intro to this, but I just want to thank everybody for being engaged with us throughout the past 6 to 8 months. We obviously had a House bill introduced on the American Franchise Act, which was its first of its kind unique franchise bill that would codify the joint employer standard of the 2020 Trump era rule and provide some clarity to franchisors and franchisees alike. That was introduced in September. Today, we were at 66 co-sponsors, all thanks to everyone's engagement. But most excitingly, we also had a Senate companion bill introduced yesterday, also bipartisan, by Senator King from Maine and then Senator Roger Marshall from Kansas, along with 3 other originals on the bill. So this is an exciting step forward. We've been working pretty hard to make sure that we get this done before the end of the year. Obviously, this is just the beginning of what's next. Obviously, we want to come back into the new year very strong Q1, make sure that we not only rack up the co-sponsors on the House side, but also make sure that we continue our conversations on some of our Senate targets and some of the key states like Arizona, Michigan, Virginia, Maryland, Colorado, Georgia, New Jersey. All these states are pretty critical for us, given that, some of the Senate Dems are represented there. And so, the main thing from this group, I'll say, is that, obviously we appreciate everyone's support here throughout the process, but it's a great outcome, great news, but also, like I said, this is just the beginning, and we're going to need to continue that push back home in the States. So if you have, operations in any of these states or any franchisees that were willing to engage, we would love to connect with them in the new year to make sure that we continue that drumbeat. Obviously the next step from here is, of course, like I said, not only making sure we get more supporters on the bill, but also making sure that the right committees that the bills are under, that have jurisdiction under, get considered early in Q1. So we're in close contact with House leadership, with even the administration. We've had the administration loves our approach to this issue, so they're fully on board. And so we've got a lot of good momentum going on. And, it's again, I just want to say once again, thank you to everybody here. I cannot stress this enough. We do what we do here in DC, but we cannot do this by ourselves. And your engagement has been really pivotal in this whole entire process. So thank you.
Thank you, Hader. So grateful for all that you and the entire government relations team is doing, and to stay abreast of what's happening and what's going on with government relations. To me, the easiest place is just follow IFA on LinkedIn. I think Alan or Hader, let me know, is the savelocalbusinesses.com site that's still up and being updated consistently. So is that correct, Hader?
That is correct. Yep, savelocalbusinesses.com. It's basically the website that we've put online on this issue as part of our broader coalition of folks in the business community and beyond that are supportive of this issue. We actually had a letter of support on the American Franchise Act sent to the Hill a few weeks ago. And a lot of those groups that you'll see on that website are also on that letter.
All right. So join us on LinkedIn in the conversation. Visit savelocalbusinesses.com and continue to keep great thoughts and money and support and praise and franchisees and everything you can headed towards government relations as they do their best to really make history in franchising and in associations to bring an entire bill before Congress specific to this entire industry group. And with that, we want to continue to ask you to support this group. We have an amazing group of volunteers that you may know as our marketing task force. They are shown here on the screen. Many of them are on the call today. Larissa Walega, Marcy Kleinsasser, Lindsay Simpson, and Madeline Suk. They are consistently working to build a clear, consistent identity, expand the reach, and drive interaction. Really resulting in huge results, more and more people joining the webinars and the content that we have put together here, engaging at the highest level. Our LinkedIn impressions, reactions, comments, and reposts have grown like crazy. If you are not following us on LinkedIn, take a moment, grab your phone, aim it at that QR code, and please join us on LinkedIn. I believe when these amazing women started, we had just maybe less than 50 followers on LinkedIn, and we're well over 600 now, and we need more. I also, for those of you that are franchisors that are looking for someone in your organization who is growing, learning, and wants to really be joined at the hip with some of the best in the industry, we would love to have, and we have 2 openings in our marketing task force. Reach out to me, reach out to Emma, direct message us, grab us on LinkedIn, and let us know that you have someone who has something to give to franchising, and we want to help to mentor and grow them responsibly and let them learn from some of the best in the business. Emma, anything to add to that?
No, I just, am so grateful. The marketing task force has really done a heavy lift this year on behalf of the forum to advance our direction, our identity, and our content. And they've just been amazing. And so it would be if someone is interested and has someone on team that could really benefit from learning from these 4 incredible women, we'd love to have them.
Absolutely. Just want to mention that our prior webinars are available. If you go to franchise.org, amazing new rebuilt site. If you haven't spent some time on it, please spend some time there. Go to franchise.org, enter Franchisor Forum, and then you'll jump right to a page for us. And then don't forget our last and final webinar. We have made it through all 6 stages. Once we conclude on January 22nd, which will also be at noon Eastern time, is the we stage. And we are just hearing about some great candidates who will be part of that panel. Super excited. And last but not least, please join us in person at the IFA conference in Las Vegas. Our meeting date is the 22nd, will be from 3 to 4 p.m. And we are looking forward to thoughts and ideas from you on content to make that meeting as powerful as possible, but also to have you join us for that meeting. And again, follow us. And with that, I want to just check. I've seen some notes coming in the chat. Is there something interesting in there? Lots of good stuff. Everybody, there's a reminder of Save Local Businesses in there at savelocalbusinesses.com. If you're not a member of FranPack, please do contribute. And we want to thank everyone for their time. We have maybe 4 minutes left. So if there is anyone who had a question or thought, wanted to jump into the conversation and ask Emma or Michael anything else while we have these both two amazing individuals before us talking about this stage of the franchise. Is there anyone who would like to kick in with a question? If they don't want to ask it out loud, they can stick it into the chat as well. I had a direct message question. Michael, this is for you. So you were a franchisee and now work for the franchisor. So that really is full circle. How did that come to be?
Well, again, when I exited, again, I as much as I didn't I wanted to stay retired, I knew I had to go back to work, but I also could have gone pretty much anywhere I wanted to go, and I specifically wanted to go back to Home Helpers, to the system that helped me achieve my dreams, and one thing I forgot to mention was sometimes I hear, why is the leadership of a franchisor out in publicity? Going out to conferences. And I think that's very important for the brand, because when you exit, one thing you realize is buyers, they want to make sure that they're buying into a brand that's, that's solid. And so those things are all very important. So when I exited, Emma will tell you, I raised my hand maybe 3 times to her and said, I'm interested. I want to come back. There's a lot of areas that I think I can help and improve. And luckily, I got a call 8 months into my retirement, and we did some interviews, and I came back. So the reason I raised my hand to come back to Home Helpers was because of everything that we discussed in our webinar. I trusted the leadership. I trusted Emma at the helm. I knew that they had a good team, and I just wanted to be part of that team. And so,
And by the way, that 8 months, it wasn't a matter of the way, it was timing. As we don't have an unlimited budget, no brands do. And so it was timing. Michael and I had several conversations about his desire to remain with the brand and what he felt, and he did a very, very good job of outlining the value he thought he would bring based on his experience as a franchisee. And we knew that, that was valuable. We knew his experience. We knew where he had been successful, and we knew where
Hey, Wayne, how's it going?
there were times it was,
Hey, good.
not. So, it was really good timing, and he's been a terrific add and now leader of our support team with our franchisees.
Couldn't wrap it up with a better kind of endorsement of how the two of you arrived at the C stage. And so again, just ask everyone to join us on January 22nd. We wrap up this series and move to the we stage, and we'll see you at IFA conference on the 22nd of February. It's coming up before we know it. Thank you all for joining us. It is our pleasure as the Franchisor Forum to put forth content that is both helpful and meaningful. We hope that you will take away 1 or 2 things. I have a whole notebook with things written down, including to go look up that Benjamin Franklin quote. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you for all that you do to support this industry that we are all so passionate about. I'll let you go. It's straight up 1 o'clock and give you back your day. Bye, guys.
Happy holidays.